Hey everyone, today we're going to be ranking all of the licensed killers on how well they were adapted from their source material into Dead by Daylight. By and large, all of the licenses were transferred over pretty well, with a few exceptions. Let's get into it. Starting off at the bottom of our list, and possibly the worst adaptation, we have Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street chapter. Freddy's visuals are probably the best part of his adaptation, although broadly visuals are never really the issue. In this case, they pretty aptly recreate the look of Freddy's appearance in the 2010 A Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Despite this, he's probably the Freddy version that people wanted the least, being the remake and not the original. The remake taking on much darker tones and generally losing the original's vibe. When Freddy came to Dead by Daylight, he had a much more fitting power compared to what he has now, which included a better use of the dream world. The dream world is kind of a big deal for Freddy, being a dream demon and whatnot. Now Freddy has these little blood splotches that he can place on the floor to slow down survivors, and occasionally when survivors are far enough away, Freddy will be invisible. The only thing that keeps Freddy's trickery and torment intact are probably the dream palettes, but even they are kind of presented as an additional or optional bonus and don't act as a core part of his kit. I would argue the best thing in terms of this license was the pretty accurate perks that do capture Freddy's whole feel. Next up we have Nemesis. Nemesis is one of the most recent licensed adaptations, and honestly, I think lacking in quite a few areas. Visually, the Nemesis does actually drop somewhat in quality, I think. Possibly evened out by many of the animations, which look great and generally recreate the Nemesis's movement very well. A large issue I have with Nemesis is that his power doesn't really work for what he is. His tentacle strike seems very awkwardly put in as his power. In the Resident Evil 3 remake, the game he is taken from, the tentacles are not used too often, and when they are typically lethal or directly grip onto Jill. In DBD, they just kind of slap the person, not even for an injured state, and also have a tiny range. I get they have to weaken characters to an extent, but this just doesn't scream Nemesis to me. I do like the incorporation of using his fists as his M1, however. The zombies also being a very cool addition that I think definitely does add to his overall design. Visually, or from the exterior, it looks like Nemesis, but in power especially, it doesn't really feel like him to me. Bubba is kind of a tough one to rank because they did technically get him pretty spot on, with his chainsaw sweep and tantrum when he hits into an object or structure, but it's all just quite basic. I guess Bubba is quite a simple character though really, so adapting him didn't need to be overdone, as if it was, it may have ruined it. Simplicity in this case was definitely the right way to go. Visually, Bubba is spot on, his power works, and his overall presentation is good. He also has a much more in-depth and descriptive lore segment, which is nice too. The only thing that behavior can be faulted on in this case is that originally there was a lot more that seemed copied and pasted over from Hillbilly. Some of the add-ons for the chainsaw were almost exact copies, and the power itself used to be very lacking and incredibly simplistic, even more than it is now. But hey, that's in the past, and it's not like that anymore. And overall, I think Bubba's a pretty good recreation from his source material. When Behavior acquired the license for Ghostface, they were pretty smart about how they did it. Instead of going for a big series that utilized the Ghostface mask, such as Scream, they simply acquired the license of the mask itself from Fun World. So this adaptation is really a bit broader than just the mask itself, as I guess if we're looking at Adaptation, the mask is, yeah, spot on. Everything else aside the mask from Ghostface is just from Behavior, which is pretty cool honestly, and I think actually benefited this license greatly as we get an iconic looking character, but the ability for Behavior to expand and explore more lore than a simple physical description of what the character is or was. I would say Behavior very much kept the feel for what the Ghostface mask is, with their creation of Danny Johnson or Jed Olsen, a cocky and self-absorbed killer who's also incredibly meticulous and seemingly quite intelligent. The main downfall for the Ghostface is the power really, which I think is quite lackluster and effectively just a remake of Maya's power, except on individuals instead of the collective of survivors. It feels like something a little more fun could have been done with the power, especially with the personality that Ghostface is shown to have. Demo is up next. Demo is another example of quite a simply designed but also quite a well adapted killer. Let's start off with the main issue I have with Demo, this being the handling of portals and the upside down. When Behavior adapted over demo, I think the simplifying of the Upside Down was a bit underwhelming. In the Stranger Things show, the Upside Down is like a twisted and distorted version of the regular world. In game, it's just like a black void that demo crawls through and we literally don't get to see. Really, it's just disappointing that we didn't get a more thorough exploration of it, but I totally understand why. They did do a really great job at making an easy to play and new player friendly killer. In this regard, the simplicity doesn't bother me so much. Visually, demo is amazing, same for animations, with some lacking lore, but you know, it is what it is. The way demo plays and feels is pretty broadly very good, and what I would argue is a better version of what they were kind of going for with Nemesis, using his fists as a large part of how he acts. Demo Shred is simplistic, but a lot of fun, and fitting for the character. There were also some small compromises here and there, such as Demo largely walking around on two legs, but that's more of just a necessity for gameplay. Pyramid Head's adaptation seems to have needed quite a bit of creative freedom, changing things here and there to make the character fit better into a game like DBD. Based on his iteration from Silent Hill 2, he's not actually all that similar, but the way he was adapted was actually quite a good version or compromise for what they were working off of, in my opinion. They changed him from a representation of a character's inner guilt and torment into a broader idea of a character who comes to punish those who are guilty or need to repent for sins. There's also a better tie-in through the lore where the executioner is invited into the realm almost as an equal by the entity, just showing how powerful this guy is. In Silent Hill 2, all he does largely is walk slowly towards you whilst dragging his knife, injuring you if you get too close. He's like a pursuer to push you to the next area as he can't be killed. In DBD, he has much more abilities like creating trails, the punishment of the damned attack, and the usage of cages, although they all work quite well and feel very Silent Hilly, keeping Pyramid Head's whole feel intact, even though he's moving at a faster pace as he hunts down the survivors. Visual design, sound, and animations are all also great. Next up we have the Pig. Pig's inclusion to DBD was very well done in my opinion, and was a good adaptation of Amanda Young from the Saw franchise. I also like how in the lore they utilized her death as the point where she gets taken by the entity. I like when this is done because it helps to connect the stories far easier and allows you to imagine when they are taken far clearer because of it. Pig's power and abilities are taken from various things in Saw. The stealth and pig mask are directly from the costume Amanda wears, as well as others. The hidden blade I believe was first used by John Kramer, and the reverse bear traps, an invention by Kramer that Amanda originally had to escape. This in DBD is honestly so well done, and it's incredibly cool to have the very trap she escaped as the one she puts onto others. The whole feel of the pig as a character is pretty perfectly recaptured in my opinion. There's honestly not much to fault. At the same time, I'm ranking this a little lower as it's on the simpler side I would argue in terms of adaptations. Not that this makes it unimpressive, only to me there's other licenses which are more impressive. Pinhead coming over to DBD is something I was a little skeptical about because he's not really as much of a slasher character as many of the DBD killers are. I wasn't too sure how well he would work with DBD systems in mind, but hey, I was pretty wrong because Pinhead has been adapted quite impressively to be honest. He stays true to his character whilst also pretty seamlessly fitting into DBD. His appearance is almost spot on to the 1987 Hellraiser film that it's based on. His power largely surrounding chains is a good compromise for what is effectively too much power that Pinhead really has. Focusing on the chains I think was a good route and translates to gameplay well. Further inclusion of the lament configuration was a cool way to add extra abilities like teleporting and also just getting to use the box within the game and it not being completely abandoned. Because especially in the first film, the box plays a pretty significant part. Pinhead even quoting some of the lines in game that he and the other Cenobites say in the film in reference to the box. Overall, this is a very impressively adapted license, and it seems like the reason for that is that Behavior was given a lot of freedom with how they got to adapt it. At least that's what it seems like. At the top of our list, we have the Shape of Evil himself, Michael Myers, from the 1978 film Halloween. What makes this license adaptation so impressive is that it was the first killer adapted over, and a killer that seemingly doesn't exactly translate over to a game like DBD well. The idea of stalking, which is what Myers does for most of the 1978 film, doesn't exactly sound like an engaging gameplay mechanic, but Behavior managed to make it one. His power working off of stalking, and it pretty accurately replicating how it is in the films, but is fun and engaging gameplay. Visually, Myers looks pretty spot on. In fact, I think he actually looks slightly better in DBD than in the films. His sounds are awesome, his music is great, and his whole feel is intact. When you look at him and play him, it feels like you're looking at Michael Myers and playing Michael Myers. This license adaptation was done incredibly well by Behavior, and again, again, so impressive for their first killer one. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to drop your own lists down below. Thanks, and goodbye.